The quiet suburb of Windermere, Georgia, rarely made headlines. With its neatly trimmed lawns and low crime rate, the town preferred to exist in quiet anonymity. That peace shattered on a cool autumn evening when Luke Harmon disappeared. He left his house at 8:47 p.m. wearing a windbreaker, running shoes, and earbuds. His usual night walk never lasted more than 30 minutes. But when his wife, Erin, called him at 9:30 with no answer, and by 10 o'clock still nothing, she phoned the police. There were no witnesses, no sounds, no signs of struggle, just silence. 2 days later, the local police brought in their K9 unit. Officer Darren Mack arrived with Shadow, a Belgian Malinois with years of tracking experience and a reputation for precision. Shadow had helped close 5 missing persons cases in the last year alone. The first search focused on the woods near the Harmon home, where Luke often walked. Shadow sniffed a shirt from Luke's laundry hamper, then trotted forward, his nose low to the ground. After an hour combing the trail with no results, they moved back to the house. That's when things got strange. In the garage, Shadow suddenly halted. His ears perked up, his body tensed like a coiled spring. Then, he barked. Loud, repeated, aggressive. The barking startled everyone. Officer Mack gave Shadow the hand signal to quiet down. But the dog only growled deeper, hackles rising as he stared at the far wall. It was just drywall, bare, untouched, no shelves, no stains, no door, no visible reason for alarm. Probably a rat or something behind the wall, muttered one officer, though his tone was uncertain. They moved on, documenting the moment but finding nothing else. But 2 hours later, when they swept the neighborhood again, Shadow broke away and returned, right back to that same spot in the garage. He barked. Again. Same wall. Same fury, same confusion. This time, Officer Mack ordered a thermal scan. Nothing. No heat signatures. No sound behind the plaster. No cracks. Nothing out of place. Still, Shadow wouldn't let it go. By sunset, Shadow had returned to that wall 3 times. Each time, more insistent than the last. By the 3rd visit, even the skeptics were frowning. Erin watched from the doorway, her hands shaking. That wall, she said quietly. That's the one Luke was patching last week. He said the insulation was old. That he might fix it this weekend. The room fell into a weighted silence. Mac crouched beside Shadow and gently tugged him back. "We'll need permission to cut into that wall," he said softly to Erin. She nodded. The request was filed. The tools were prepped. The next day, they'd return with drills, saws, and fresh eyes. And Shadow would be waiting. The next morning, the police returned to the Harmon residence with a small team of forensic specialists. A uniformed officer gently coaxed Shadow away from the garage wall while a crime scene tech began his scan. No blood, no hair, no torn fabric, no signs of forced entry or struggle. It was as if the wall were just a wall. "Looks like clean drywall," one tech muttered, brushing his gloves across the surface. No abrasions. No punctures. They dusted for fingerprints. Nothing but the faint smudges of Luke and his best friend, Greg Milton, the homeowner. Greg had allowed the search without hesitation. "I was the last one to see him," he said, arms crossed tightly. "We had a beer after work. Talked about the Falcons game. He left through the side gate. Like always." "You're sure no one else came into the garage that night?" Officer Mack asked. Greg shook his head. "Nobody but me and Luke ever use this place. I mean, unless someone climbed in through the damn air vent." There was a pause, the kind that feels heavier than it should. Mack nodded. "All right, thanks for your cooperation." As the afternoon wore on, the tension eased. Without evidence, there wasn't much to hold on to. The investigators began considering this a false lead. Perhaps Shadow had been distracted. Perhaps by a lingering animal scent. But Shadow wouldn't quit. He paced the edge of the garage with increased agitation. Every time someone stepped near the wall, his body stiffened. When one officer leaned close to take notes, Shadow barked with such intensity that the man stumbled backward. Startled. "Jesus," someone muttered. "He's acting like we've got 50 kilos of meth behind that wall." That's when Officer Brenner, one of the newer recruits, spoke up. "What if we try ground-penetrating radar?" Everyone turned to look at her. "It's mostly used for soil surveys and buried pipes," she said quickly, "but we've used it for concrete structures before. If there's anything strange behind that drywall, like a void, we'll see it." The team agreed. Within an hour, a portable radar scanner was brought in. Shadow was led outside to calm down. Erin watched from the porch, silent, arms wrapped around herself. The technician began scanning the wall in slow, careful arcs. At first, it looked like a solid structure, a consistent mass. But then, right in the center, an anomaly. The screen showed a distinct rectangular void about 4 feet wide and 6 feet tall. It didn't line up with any structural plan they had reviewed. A hollow space where there shouldn't be one. Officer Mack's jaw tightened. No vent, no pipe, no crawl space behind there. He exchanged a glance with Brenner. "Cut it open." The drill whirred to life. Dust filled the air. Shadow, even from outside, began to bark again, furious, relentless. And behind the wall, something waited. The whine of the drill gave way to a sharp crack as the final segment of drywall fell inward. Dust spilled into the garage like smoke. Behind it, dim and cloaked in stale air, was something no one expected. A room, roughly the size of a walk-in closet. It had been sealed completely from the outside, no hinges, no visible door frame, only the jagged edge where the wall had just been cut. The insulation around it was newer than the rest of the house, clearly added after initial construction. Officer Mack leaned forward with a flashlight. The air inside was stale, musty with age, but not rotten. No immediate signs of decay. No blood. No foul odor. Just silence. Shadow growled low and deep. Teeth bared. His body quivered with tension as he pawed at the broken entrance. Something inside that space unsettled him more than anything they'd encountered. "Back up," Mack warned. 2 officers stepped forward with gloves and pry tools. They cleared the rubble and widened the opening, then stepped cautiously into the sealed space. At the center of the room was a large wooden chest, dark oak. Polished, reinforced with metal bands. It looked almost antique, with a heavy padlock clasped at the front. "There's no dust on it," one tech noted. "This hasn't been here long." Shadow's growling intensified. "Open it," Mac said grimly. They forced the lock. It snapped open with a reluctant click. Slowly, they raised the lid. No body, just a laptop. The machine was powered on, humming quietly, its screen glowing in the darkness. As the lid fully opened, the device chimed and a video began to play automatically, like it had been waiting. Luke Harmon's face appeared. He looked tired, hollow-eyed. He sat against a white wall that bore the same texture as the sealed room. He was alive when he filmed this, and afraid. His voice was clear but strained. "If you're watching this, then I didn't make it out." There was a long pause. Then he glanced directly at the camera. "I've been betrayed by someone I trusted more than anyone. I don't know how long I have. I don't know who'll find this. But this isn't random. It's personal. It was planned." He blinked rapidly, trying to hold his composure. This wasn't an accident. The screen went black. Then it looped. The room fell into stunned silence as the video began again. Shadow let out a final snarl and then sat down heavily, ears twitching. Officer Brenner whispered, "Who did he mean?" All eyes turned to Greg Milton, standing at the edge of the garage. His face had gone pale. Erin, standing behind the group, brought a trembling hand to her mouth. The betrayal had a name. And someone in that room knew it. The air inside the police station buzzed with urgency. The laptop retrieved from the sealed room now sat in a forensics lab. Its screen still looped on Luke's haunting message. But the techs had moved past the video. They were focused on something far more alarming. The machine had been live streaming the entire time. And not just recording. "Whoever set this up wanted someone to see it in real time," said Ramirez, the lead cyber forensics analyst. "It's connected to a remote relay server, disguised through multiple VPNs, but we're working backward through packet trails." Hours passed. Lines of code scrolled across the monitors. The room was quiet, expectant. Then Ramirez spoke. "Got it." The signal terminated at a physical IP address registered to an account at a private hosting facility just 30 miles outside Windermere. That wasn't the shock. The name tied to the account. Gregory Milton. The friend. The gracious homeowner. The last person to see Luke alive. Detectives descended on Greg's residence. His reaction was swift, panic veiled as confusion. "It must be a mistake," he stammered. "Maybe my Wi-Fi was hacked. I don't." But then they found the paperwork. Buried in a locked drawer beneath old tax returns was a set of insurance documents. At first glance, they appeared legitimate. One policy stood out, a $1 million life insurance plan filed under Luke Harmon's name. Greg had forged Luke's signature, filed it 6 months ago, and listed himself as the sole beneficiary. "Why would you do this?" one officer asked. "Handcuffs ready." Greg said nothing. The motive became clear: debt. Greg had a gambling problem. One hidden well enough to fool his inner circle. But records don't lie. Credit card defaults, bank overdrafts, a recent denial for a home equity loan. He needed a way out. And he'd found it in the form of his best friend. The pieces began to fall into place. The sealed room, the staged disappearance, the laptop live streaming guilt wrapped in theatrics. But one thing was still missing. Luke. There was no body, no blood, except it was Shadow who gave them the next clue. A routine veterinary checkup revealed trace blood on the fur just beneath Shadow's collar. It had been overlooked during early scans, possibly mistaken for minor scratches. A full DNA test was ordered. The results came back within 24 hours. The blood belonged to Luke Harmon. It wasn't much, but it was fresh when deposited. Likely from physical contact during or shortly after a struggle. Luke had been there, alive, wounded. Officer Max stared at the report, the weight of the discovery pressing on his chest. Greg had tried to erase a life, but life had left its mark. Clinging to the loyalty of a dog who never gave up. They didn't have the body. But now, they had something even more powerful. Proof. Weeks passed, despite Greg Milton's arrest and the mounting evidence. The case lacked closure. Without Luke's body, prosecutors struggled to secure a definitive narrative. Some argued that Luke had died elsewhere. His final message just a warning. Others whispered about a botched abduction gone too far. But then, everything changed. In a small town 3 states away, a traffic camera snapped a routine shot of a man crossing a busy street. Facial recognition software flagged it instantly. It was Luke Harmon. He wore tinted glasses, a baseball cap, and a fake beard. In his arms was a dog, black, sleek, muscular, not Shadow, but close, a trained decoy, perhaps, something to deflect attention. The photo hit police channels like a lightning bolt. Within 48 hours, agents tracked Luke to a remote cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He surrendered without resistance, calm, even relieved. When questioned, he confessed everything. "I had to disappear," Luke said. "It was the only way to expose him." He detailed the months he spent suspecting Greg of fraud, small inconsistencies. Private calls cut short. Financial documents Greg had asked him to sign under vague pretenses. Luke didn't confront him. Instead, he planned. "I built the room myself," he told detectives. "Every inch. I installed the laptop, recorded the message. I even bled. Just a little. Enough to leave behind." He smuggled out supplies to a pre-prepared location and trained Shadow to react aggressively to the garage wall. He's smarter than people give him credit for. He remembered the smell. He knew the energy. I trusted him more than anyone else. The entire setup was a trap, one laid not just to disappear, but to push Greg to make a mistake. To watch who tried to cash in. To see who stayed quiet. It worked. At trial, the courtroom was packed. Cameras flashed. Headlines screamed about the man who faked his own death to catch a criminal. Luke took the stand, composed but emotional. "I knew I had to do something drastic. he said. Greg would have gotten away with it. The insurance money, the lies, everything, but there was one variable he couldn't predict. He paused, eyes locking on the K9 unit sitting obediently by Officer Mack. Shadow. He swallowed hard, voice cracking. If Shadow hadn't barked, no one would have found the room. No one would have known where to look. No one would have believed the betrayal. The courtroom was still. I trusted one being in this whole mess, and he never let me down. A murmur ran through the crowd. The judge wiped his eyes. In the end, Greg was sentenced for insurance fraud, attempted grand larceny, and obstruction of justice. Luke was cleared of criminal charges, though fined for falsifying evidence and misleading authorities. He accepted it without protest. After the trial, Luke and Shadow were reunited. This time, there were no secrets, just loyalty and the truth.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.